My name is Madison Cole, and I was 34 the year I learned I was nothing more than negative space in someone else's family portrait. By day, I manage chaos for a pharmaceutical distributor. I'm a supply chain operations manager. My job is to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be, when it's supposed to be there, without anyone noticing the panicked triage happening in the background. Apparently, that was the perfect training for being my boyfriend's invisible foundation, too. Evan Hawthorne is 31, and the kind of handsome that photographs well from every angle. Dark hair, careful stubble, teeth that have clearly known an orthodontist. He grew up in a world where things aren't just nice, they are curated. His parents, Richard and Eleanor, are the sort of people who have white sofas in every room and somehow keep them actually white. Their social feeds look like magazine spreads, cream sweaters, soft lighting, matching glassware, no cables in sight, no clutter, no reality. I grew up in a skinny row house in Philly with radiator heat that banged in the winter, and a mom who fixed the washing machine with duct tape and stubbornness. State college, secondhand car. I like doing my own oil changes and keeping spreadsheets of my grocery budget because it calms me down. When Richard and Eleanor look at me, I can see it in their eyes. I am a smudge on their lens. 3 years ago, Evan and I moved into a luxury apartment downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, concierge, a rooftop pool I've used twice. When we applied, Evan's credit was wrecked. His attempt at a curated lifestyle box business had crashed spectacularly. His father refused to co-sign the lease, delivering a whole speech over a scotch I paid for about how struggle builds character. So the lease went in my name, just mine. The utilities? My name. The renter's insurance? My name. Evan pays for his Audi lease, which Richard very nobly co-signed, and his personal expenses. But the roof over our heads has always legally been mine. The incident happened on a Tuesday that started like any other. I'd just survived a 12-hour shift untangling a refrigerated truck fiasco in the Midwest. I came home fried, smelling faintly of warehouse and stale coffee. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and saw Evan in the foyer adjusting a vase of hydrangeas. "Hey," I said, "you're home early." "Mom and Dad are coming this weekend," he said, not looking up. His tone had that buzzing, purposeful energy he gets when he's in presentation mode. "You remember, right?" "I know," I said. "I already bought that gin Eleanor likes, and I booked a reservation at the steakhouse Richard tolerates." He finally looked at me. It wasn't a grateful look. It was assessment, like he was trying to decide if I clashed with the pillows. "Actually," he said, wiping his hands on a linen towel, "we need to talk logistics." Something cold settled in my stomach. I hear that phrase at work when a shipment has gone wrong and nobody wants to admit whose fault it is. "Okay," I said carefully. "What logistics?" He smiled, but it didn't soften his eyes. "I think it would be better if you stayed at a hotel for the weekend." For a second, my brain, still half in spreadsheets and shipping manifests, didn't process the words. "I'm sorry, what?" "The hotel," he repeated, slower this time, like maybe I didn't speak English. "The Marriott is nice. Or the Kimpton, just for 3 nights. I stared at him. "Why," I asked, "would I stay at a hotel when this is my home?" He exhaled dramatically, as if I were being unreasonable. "Because we're doing the official family portraits," he said, gesturing toward the living room, "for the holiday cards and the wall at their house. Eleanor wants to recreate some of the old photos from when we were kids. Just the core 4, me, Mom, Dad, and Morgan. Morgan, his younger sister, the one who documents her life in pastel reels, and refers to her followers as my little coven." "Okay," I said slowly. "You all can take photos. I can step out for a few hours. I don't need to be exiled." "It's not just the photos, Mads," he said, sounding impatient. "It's the vibe. The vibe. You know how you and Dad get," he went on. "You're from different worlds. We want a pure family weekend. Nostalgia, bonding, and—" He hesitated, searching for the word that would hurt the most while sounding the most harmless. "Honestly, you just don't fit the aesthetic we're going for." My throat went dry. "The aesthetic. You're a bit rustic," he said, like he was describing a table that needed sanding. "It clashes with the theme." A beat of silence passed where I could actually hear the blood in my ears. "Rustic," I repeated. "I pay the rent on this theme. I pay the electric bill that powers the ring lights for this theme. But I'm too rustic to be in frame?" "Don't make this about money," he snapped. "That's so tacky. It's just 3 days. Treat it like a mini vacation. Get room service. Watch your sports. I don't watch sports, I said automatically, which somehow made it worse. He couldn't even be bothered to accurately imagine what I'd do alone in a hotel. He waved that off. Whatever you do to unwind, just give us this space, okay? Please. You know how my parents are. Penelope never had an issue with it. There it was, the ghost in the room. Penelope, the ex-girlfriend who apparently fit so perfectly into their sepia-toned world that Eleanor still occasionally, accidentally, liked her posts. She's the one they bring up when my jeans are a little too faded or my nail polish is chipped. Penelope understood the Hawthorne aesthetic. Penelope never argued about dress codes. Penelope would have looked perfect in white cashmere on a pale sofa. I felt something in my chest go very, very still. So, I said, keeping my voice flat, to be clear, you want me to leave my home, which I pay for, so that you can pretend I don't exist while you take photos with your parents and younger sister, and your ex-girlfriend would have handled this better. You're not leaving, he said, rolling his eyes. You're just pausing. You're still my girlfriend, just not for this weekend. The strange thing was, the anger didn't come all at once. It didn't explode. It crystallized. Slow, heavy, icy. Understood, I said. Relief flickered across his face so quickly I wanted to look away. Thank you, he said brightly. I knew you'd get it. Oh, and can you make sure the guest bath is fully stocked before you go? Mom hates running out of towels. Of course she does. That night, I stood alone in the bedroom, staring at my open suitcase. I didn't pack for 3 nights. I packed my life. Work clothes. The few nice pieces of furniture I'd bought before I ever met Evan. My books, my gadgets. The things that were mine, paid for with late nights and overtime shifts nobody thanked me for. When Evan left for his Pilates class the next morning, the hydrangeas still perfectly perky in their vase, I sat down on the edge of our bed and made one phone call. Hi, Dave, I said when the property manager picked up. He likes me because I never complain about noise and I pay rent 3 days early. I need to exercise the immediate termination clause in my lease. Everything okay, Madison? He asked. Personal emergency, I said. I'm willing to pay the break fee. 2 months' rent, right? Yeah, he said slowly. But you'd have to surrender possession immediately. Keys turned in, unit empty of your belongings. I looked around the room. The dresser I'd bought on Craigslist before Evan. The nightstand I'd assembled myself. My lamp, my books, my life. Consider it done by tomorrow morning, I said. It cost me $6,000 to break that lease. I wrote the check without flinching. It felt less like an expense and more like a toll. The price of crossing a bridge out of someone else's curated fantasy. By the time Evan came home that evening, half the good things in the apartment were gone. A same-day moving crew had whisked my world into storage while he was at the gym and then grabbing smoothies with a friend. The place looked minimalist, as he would probably call it. He didn't even notice. He was too busy on the phone with Morgan, debating color palettes for the weekend shoot. The next morning, before he woke up, I placed the keys on the kitchen counter. Next to them, I set a large manila envelope and a handwritten note. Then I picked up my suitcase, stepped out of the apartment I'd paid for, and walked toward the elevator without looking back. I didn't go to the Marriott he had suggested. I checked into a business hotel across town, ordered a black coffee, turned off my location sharing, and sat on the edge of a too-firm bed, waiting for the power to go out on the little world that had tried to crop me out of the frame. My phone started buzzing around noon. I'd scheduled the utility cutoffs for 10:30 a.m. The Hawthorns like to arrive fashionably late, which apparently means just enough time to complain about valet and then sweep into a room already perfectly staged for them. I imagined it like a logistics map. Estimated time of arrival, buffer, disruption window. You could put it on a whiteboard. I didn't turn the ringer on. I just watched the screen light up on the nightstand while I drank my coffee. First, it was texts. From Evan. Where is the coffee maker? The expensive one. Did you take it? I had. I bought it. Another ping. Wi-Fi is down. I can't stream the mood playlist. Fix it. Then, AC just shut off. It's getting hot in here. What is going on? I leaned back against the headboard and scrolled slowly. The air conditioning in my bland hotel room hummed steadily. The irony wasn't lost on me. The next text came with the photo of my note I'd left on the envelope. Is this a joke? Call me, Mads. Then, this is childish. Turn the power back on immediately. We have guests coming. Mom is trying to do her makeup, and there's no light in the bathroom. Unacceptable. I pictured Eleanor in a powerless bathroom, staring at her own reflection in natural light like a civilian. The thought should not have made me smile, but it did, a small, bitter curl at the corner of my mouth. The buzzing didn't stop. Calls from Evan, from an unknown number that was probably Richard, another that could only be Eleanor's private line. I set the phone face down and ordered lunch, a burger and fries from room service. Very rustic. By the time the food arrived, there were 18 missed calls from Evan, 5 from Richard, 3 from Eleanor, and an entire stack of new texts. I ate slowly. Finally, the message I'd been waiting for appeared. Dave just knocked on the door. He says we have to leave. He says you surrendered the apartment. Answer your phone. I wiped my fingers on the napkin, picked up the phone, and hit accept the 19th time it rang. Hello, I said, putting it on speaker and setting it down so I could eat my fries. Madison. Evan's voice was high and ragged, right at that edge before a person either cries or screams. What have you done? Dave is standing here with a clipboard telling my father we're trespassing. I hope the family weekend is going well, I said mildly. Stop it, he snapped. Stop it right now. Why is the power out? Why did you cancel the lease? You asked me to leave, I said calmly. You said I didn't belong in the family picture. You said I didn't fit the aesthetic. I realized you were right. You knew what I meant, he said, and I could hear noise behind him, raised voices, Eleanor's clipped tone, Richard's deeper bark, someone muttering about lawsuits. It was just for the weekend, for the portraits. You told me I wasn't welcome in my own home, I said. You made it clear I was a problem to be edited out for the sake of your parents' image, so I removed myself. Not like this, he shouted. You can't just terminate the lease. This is my home too. That's the thing, I said, picking up another fry. It isn't. Not legally. The lease is in my name. The utilities are in my name. The insurance is in my name. You all were just beneficiaries of my credit score. You're being dramatic, he said. You're overreacting. This is insane. In the background, I heard Richard's voice, closer now, as if he'd grabbed the phone. Madison, this is Richard. You need to come down here and fix this right now. This is an absolute disgrace. Hi, Richard, I said. Enjoying the natural light for the photos? This is not a joke, he thundered. We have a photographer arriving in an hour. We have outfits. You cannot just throw us out into the street. I didn't throw you anywhere, I said. I surrendered a unit I was paying for back to the management company. If you're still there, you're, what's the word? Oh, squatters. Richard made a strangled sound. There was some shuffling, and then another voice came on the line. Hey, Madison, Dave said, sounding like a man who had already had a very long morning. I've got the Hawthorns here insisting they have tenant rights. I told them you terminated the lease, but they're refusing to vacate. It's kind of a situation. I'm sorry you're dealing with that, I said. You have the paperwork, right? Termination receipt? Surrender of premises? Yeah, Dave sighed. It's all in order. The utilities company confirmed you shut everything off. From a liability standpoint, I can't let them stay. No power, no insurance. I'm going to have to call PD if they don't leave voluntarily. Do what you need to do, I said. I'm out. There was a beat of silence. You're going to regret this, Richard said, back on the line, voice shaking with fury. I will sue you for every penny. You have humiliated my family. I didn't humiliate your family, I said quietly. You did that when you decided their comfort mattered more than basic respect for the person keeping a roof over your son's head. Evan's voice cut in, shrill. Mads, please. Just come back. We can sort this out. Sign a new lease, or at least turn the power back on while my parents are here. Evan, I said, you wanted a pure family weekend. You got it. Just you, your parents, your sister, and whatever decor you can carry. He made a broken noise. This is blowing everything out of proportion. You're ruining our lives over one photo. This isn't about one photo, I said. It's about the fact that when you had to choose between me and their approval, you picked their aesthetic. I'm just rearranging things to match reality. I took the phone off speaker and put it to my ear. Also, I added, since your father is so fond of character-building struggle, consider this a growth opportunity. Madison. Good luck with the shoot, I said, and hung up. For a while after, I just sat there in the quiet hotel room, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the echo of my own heartbeat. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, the high, tight feeling you get after you finally say the thing you should have said years ago. About 2 hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from a number I'd saved months ago. Mike, 12C. Mike is a neighbor from our old building, the kind of guy who always holds the elevator and feeds your cat when you're out of town. He and his wife are the only normal people I met in that entire tower of glass. He'd sent a video. It opened to a shot of the front of our building. The sky was bright. the kind of unseasonably hot day that makes concrete shimmer. The Hawthorns were standing on the sidewalk in front of the revolving doors like an exiled royal family. Courtney-level luggage, hard-shell cases with designer logos, was piled around them. Eleanor was fanning herself with a clutch, her face twisted in an expression like she'd just smelled something rotten. Richard stood off to the side, red-faced and jabbing a finger at a police officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Evan was in the middle of it, phone in hand, hair slightly mussed, which somehow made the scene feel even more surreal. Beside him, Morgan was holding a garment bag with Hawthorne portraits, written on the tag in curling script. And in the background, the photographer, a guy with a massive camera rig and a rolling case of lenses, was packing his gear into the back of a hatchback, clearly abandoning the job because there was nowhere to shoot. I pinched the screen and zoomed in on Evan's face. He looked small. The aesthetic was definitely ruined. Mike added a caption. "You okay? Looks like you got out just in time." I stared at the video for a long moment, then typed back. "I'm okay. Thanks for the heads up." Later that evening, as the sky outside my hotel window turned the same soft pink I used to see through the apartment's floor-to-ceiling glass, an email lit up my inbox. From Richard Hawthorne. Subject: Demand for reimbursement. Of course. I opened it. "Madison, your stunt today was reprehensible. You have humiliated my son and inconvenienced my wife. We have checked into the Four Seasons for 3 nights due to your actions. I expect you to reimburse me for the cost of 2 suites, plus the photographer's cancellation fee. The total is $5,800. Send the wire immediately, or I will involve my legal team. Richard Hawthorne." I read it twice, just to be sure I hadn't imagined the audacity. Then I clicked reply and wrote, "Richard, I did not book the Four Seasons. I did not hire the photographer. I am not responsible for your lifestyle choices. As you once told me, facing the consequences of financial decisions is character building. Consider this a building exercise. Do not contact me again. Madison." I hit send and closed my laptop. Outside, the city lights blinked on one by one, reflected in the hotel window. For the first time in 5 years, I was not mentally calculating how to make everyone else comfortable. I lay back on the bed and let the unfamiliar feeling settle into my bones. It felt a lot like freedom. For exactly 24 hours after the great eviction, I heard nothing from Evan. Silence, I learned, is not peace. Sometimes it's just the moment before a storm remembers it still has business with you. By the next morning, the calm cracked. The first text came at 7:12 a.m. "Mads, can we please talk?" I didn't answer. At 7:15, "I'm trying to understand why you'd do something so extreme. One weekend? Really?" Then guilt. "I can't believe you threw us away over a photo. My mom is devastated. My dad is furious. I'm trying to hold everything together here." Then emotional manipulation. "If you really loved me, you would have understood families are complicated." I sat in my new loft, a short-term rental in the industrial district, all exposed brick and concrete floors, and watched the morning light catch the dust in the air. Everything about the place felt honest. No curated minimalism, pretending to be a life. I typed back, "I didn't throw anything away. You handed me the trash bag. I just took it out." I expected him to escalate, but the next move didn't come from him. It came from my job. On Tuesday, just as I was settling into my desk, my email pinged with a meeting request from the VP of Operations. Subject line, "Ethics complaint, urgent." My first thought was, this has Richard's fingerprints all over it. The VP, a sharply dressed woman named Caroline, was already seated when I stepped into her office. "Madison," she said, hands folded over a printout, "we received an anonymous complaint through the ethics hotline." I sat. She slid the paper toward me. It accused me of embezzling company funds to pay for luxury hotels, a secret apartment, and personal indulgences. It was oddly specific: dates, hotel names, even the cost of the lease break. I let out a short laugh. Richard Hawthorne is a creative man, if nothing else. "Your boyfriend's father?" she asked. "Ex," I corrected. "And yes," she sighed. "Do you have documentation proving these expenses are personal?" "Absolutely." I pulled up my banking app, my lease termination receipt, moving invoices, and the credit card charge from my hotel, all from my personal accounts. No corporate card in sight. Caroline skimmed them. "Okay, this seems like a personal dispute bleeding into your professional life. I'll close the case." She hesitated, then said, "The complaint came from an email address, Rawthorne Business." I snorted, "Anonymous my ass." Caroline gave me a sympathetic look. "Keep it out of the office, Madison." I'm trying, I said. But the Hawthorns weren't done. Not even close. That night, I received 12 rapid-fire messages from Evan. He'd tried transferring $5,000 out of our joint household account. The transfer failed, because I had already removed my portion the day I left. He sent me a screenshot of the error message. What did you do? You stole my money. I typed. I took back my paycheck. The remaining $400 is yours. Spend it wisely. 5 minutes later, a new notification popped up. A TikTok, posted by Morgan Hawthorne. Of course, she was crying in her car, mascara artistically smudged, dramatic filter softening everything except the tears glistening on her cheeks. Caption: when your abusive brother-in-law abandons your sister on the streets with nothing, #truth, time, #protect family. In the video, she sniffled and told a story where I locked them out without warning, stole their home, and left Evan and her sweet parents homeless. Not a single mention of Evan asking me to leave. The aesthetic comment. Their demand I erase myself from their photos. The lease being in my name. The utilities being in my name. The facts. Thousands of views in minutes. Comments exploding. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. Instead, I forwarded the TikTok to the email address of the attorney I had contacted that morning. M. Vance Eskew, a woman who sounded like she could dissolve a man's ego with a single raised eyebrow. She replied within 10 minutes. On it! 2 hours later, 3 cease and desist letters went out. 1 to Richard, 1 to Evan, and 1 to Morgan. The letters detailed. Then the legal validity of my lease termination, the exact timeline of events, the request that I leave my home, the defamatory nature of their posts, the false ethics complaint submitted to my employer, which was tortious interference. Morgan's TikTok vanished within the hour. But the Hawthorns weren't out of ammunition. They just aimed lower. The real blow came 2 days later. I drove to my storage unit to retrieve a box of winter clothes. When I entered my code, the keypad flashed red. Access denied. I frowned and went inside to speak to the manager, a tired-looking man named Joel who always smelled faintly of coffee and disappointment. Hey, he said when he looked me up in the system. Didn't you come by yesterday? No, I said slowly. Well, your partner did. My what? Your partner, he said, already uncomfortable. Tall guy, dark hair. He had the spare key and the code. Said you were consolidating units. My stomach dropped. He rented a truck too. Took a lot of stuff. What did he take? Joel grimaced. Furniture, boxes, electronics, pretty much anything he pointed at. My blood went ice cold. Before he even finished talking, I was already out the door. Out in the parking lot, in my car. Engine roaring. I drove straight to the address I knew the Hawthorns were currently using. A rented Airbnb they'd retreated to after getting kicked out of the Four Seasons because Richard argued about the bill. When I pulled up, the garage door was open. There was a moving truck in the driveway, and Evan, my ex, was carrying my leather armchair inside like it belonged to him. Next to him, Richard was dragging my vintage turntable, the one I bought in 2015, years before I ever met Evan. Morgan was unpacking my first edition sci-fi novels on a shelf inside the Airbnb. I didn't scream. I didn't storm up the driveway. I didn't even roll down my window. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. Hi, I said calmly. I'd like to report a theft. I have receipts for all items and a storage contract in my name. The individuals currently unloading my property have neither. The officer arrived 15 minutes later. By then, the Hawthorns had unpacked half my belongings like they were staging another photo shoot. What happened next was humiliating. For them. Not me. The officer asked for receipts. Evan stammered. Richard claimed everything was marital property. I pulled up digital copies of my receipts. The turntable dated 2015. My armchair purchased during a solo moving phase in 2016. The books were from my college years. Sir, the officer said to Richard, put the speakers down unless you have proof they're yours. Richard did not put the speakers down gently. They had to load everything back onto the truck. All of it. My life reclaimed piece by piece, Morgan cried. Eleanor muttered about unbelievable overreactions. Evan looked at me like I'd personally ruined his life. When they finished, Madison's stuff carefully reloaded, they all stood in the driveway staring at me. Evan managed, It's just stuff, Madison. Why are you being petty? We needed furniture. Then go to IKEA, I said, and drove off behind the police escort carrying the truck with my belongings. Miss Vance filed the divorce petition the next morning. We weren't asking for much, just a clean break. But given everything they'd done, the defamation, the theft, the ethics complaint, we were also asking for legal fees. The judge would decide, and she did, in spectacular fashion.